All right, so in this video, I'm going to discuss a lot of my glue tests for gluing clear acrylic, and I'm going to show you a couple of examples, as well as cover my favorite glues. So there's a couple different glues that I have a sort of as a go-to. The first one is Weld-On number 4, and this is a liquid thin fast set Weld-On that you would use with a syringe. So it comes with this bottle sometimes. Throw that out. It drips. Don't use that. You want to use a non-medical syringe. You're going to draw some of it up. And then to use it, you would just clamp two pieces together with your fingers or the clamp, and then gently run a bead of this, and it will draw in between the pieces using capillary action, and it will actually melt the plastic and fuse it back together. So that is a very strong bond, and you can see I have a bunch of different samples here, which I'm going to go over in a moment. The other glues I have are the Gorilla Glue Clear Gel. And this is not their super glue. This is like, it's kind of like a sticky, I don't know what the base of the glue is, but it's a great glue. And one cool thing you can do with that is you can use water, spray the surfaces, and then place them together with some of the glue, and the glue will sort of spread with the water and get you a really, really nice clear look. The disadvantage of this glue is it takes a while to dry. It's not like an instant set like the Weld-On or my next option, which is going to be All Craft Multi Glue. This is like a super glue. It has that same feel. It glues really, really quick, but it's much clearer than you're going to find with a typical super glue, and works great for acrylic, wood, leather, etc. The fourth glue, which I don't have the bottle with me because I've run out, is UV resin. I really like UV resin for a variety of reasons. One, because you have infinite working time until you're ready to cure it. The disadvantages are you need a UV lamp, so you have to buy one that will fit your piece. It's kind of like runny, and so it can be sort of hard to manage, but you can spread it with like a brush or a silicone tool like these here. This is what I use. I spread it out as best I can, and then I put the pieces together. We'll kind of squish them together gently and then cure it. So the working time on that's really nice because you have a lot of control, but it will set fast when you're ready. The pieces do tend to shift, and that can be a little bit of a challenge. So I find that one a little bit harder to work with. But those are probably my 4 top glues. Now let's talk about a couple of glues that I have eliminated from various tests. So there are a lot of similar to, but not Weld-On. Plastruct is one of them. I'm not a big fan of it. As you can see, it creates like a haloing sort of like frosty ring, which I don't think looks really good. So we'll toss that out. Weld-Bond PVA, it's a great PVA glue for like wood and tons of other stuff, but you can see it dries with bubbles and a really filmy appearance, so it's definitely not very clear. 2-part epoxy, this looks pretty good on camera, but if I can get it close, you might be able to see that it has tons of like little micro bubblies in there. So for the effort of having to mix it, it smells bad. It's not my favorite. I wouldn't use that. And then I have this kind of novelty one that I've done, and this is like metal tape, kind of like what you would use for edging stained glass. And so one technique you can try with a lot of these glues, especially UV resin and this tape, is actually applying it only to the edge, not to the surfaces. And this works for that. It's not a bad bond. It wouldn't work for something that's like handled a lot, like a keychain. It's going to definitely fall apart, but it definitely holds on there relatively well. The aluminum tape that you might have used to seal your laser ducting is another great option for that. It's only going to have very, very specific applications, but it's just kind of an interesting thing I tried, and I wanted to show that. One other one I've eliminated, this one's not labeled, is contact cement. I actually do really like using contact cement in the right circumstances. So one way that I have used that in the past is I've sprayed it on the back of veneer and then acrylic, and then run them through a laminator so there's like a ton of pressure to bring them together. And that actually works really good for creating your own sort of wood veneer acrylics. But it's not very clear, as you can see. Tons of like filmy, sort of like bubbly looks. Ironically, when you do it with clear acrylic and wood, it doesn't look terrible because the wood texture kind of hides it, but it's definitely not very clear. It does work though. The disadvantage is you have to spray it so it will go everywhere. So just be aware. That's another one. So now that we've eliminated that, let's look at these two. So here's our Gorilla Glue Loctite GO2, the gel, is almost identical to this. They probably have a very similar formulation. You can see the Loctite GO2 here. It's actually quite clear. So that's a really good one. I really like the Gorilla Glue and the Loctite GO2 for their clarity. You can, let's see if I can find it on camera. These, because of that water technique of spraying the water, they get to the edges really well and they're pretty easy to peel. But you will see the edges of these. I'm not sure if it's really going to show it for you on camera, but so you might be able to see it there. You can see that kind of reflecting in this corner. You will see the edges of this just like some of the other glues, but those are a really good option. So let's move those off to the side. Okay, so my next options here, so this is another one. I didn't mention this in the beginning for some reason, but 3M. So what's really cool is you can apply this directly to your acrylic before cutting, or you can cut it after. It is laser safe. There's a similar product called Dry Tack OCA. This is actually used for dry mounting photos to acrylic. So when you have a photo and there's an acrylic surface, that's what this is used for. So it's another really great adhesive. It is very optically clear, but they're not perfect. There's like a little bit off. You can sometimes see a little bit of like bubbling here, and you can kind of see that. Here you can see it with a frosted acrylic on a solid. So you can see sometimes there's bubbling. Do be aware that this is pressure sensitive and that you need to put pressure on this or clamp this or run it through really heavy rollers in order to get the best effect, because pressure is what makes it cure. So it does have a cure time. Technically, it will stick instantly, but the bond increases over time. The next one here, these are all my weld-on tests. I tested a ton of different things. You can definitely see here's frosted on a clear base. You can see the edges, and that's the most frustrating thing. It is quite clear. You just can see it. So there's never really like a super perfect example. So same thing here. You can see it's very clear. You can see the edges of where the glue is, and it is almost impossible to try to get this to flow across an entire surface. So like I've tried painting it on and it evaporates way too fast. I've tried soaking it because the instructions do say you can do that. So I soaked one side and then stuck it to a dry piece. That turns out terrible. I've tried soaking both sides and that looks a little better, but it's not really worth it because it like gets really gooey and messy, and that's just so much faster. I've tried spraying alcohol to see if it would work like the water trick with the Loctite GO2 and the Gorilla Glue. It does not work. I've tried spraying water just to see, and that actually worked better than the other one, but it's still not worth it. And I have tried painting it on another time, and it's just the best way to do it is with the syringe. What I do like about using the weld-on is it works great for things where you're putting like a lip on something or you're making like an edge. So I have these, and this one's actually done with UV resin, but it illustrates the point that I have like a well here, and I can just run the syringe along the unusual edge, even if the two pieces are not the same shape. So a few of these glues work better if the two pieces are exactly the same shape and you're just trying to sandwich them. So we've seen the weld on. Here's an example of that with the weld on here. And once again, you can see the edges, and that's the most frustrating part. Like in person, it's not terrible, but you could see it, and that's not the best. It does work. It's a great bond, and in certain applications, I do really like to use this. So the next one is the All Craft. So I've let all of these dry, and you can see they're pretty clear. So this is clear on wood. These are two pieces of clear together. Once again, you can see the edges just like the other. I tried spraying the water. Don't do that. That does not work. And then here it is with frosted. So same thing. Wherever, if you can't get it all the way to the edge, you're going to see them. And that's just the nature of it. I don't think this is the best one for trying to flood a whole surface. One thing to note is if you do get air trapped, so you can see here I did like a squiggle when I glued these. Sometimes you will have a little bit of off-gassing, but I didn't see that in most of my samples. The better technique for gluing two pieces together is to make an X, because then when you press, it pushes the air out. So just keep that in mind. I do really like this. It's super fast set. It's great for pieces like this. So I've like glued these, like I've dropped these. You can break them apart, but you could probably do that no matter what you glued them with. Wood to acrylic, It's got like a nice look. It's very easy to use and it's very quick. It's just got like a nice precision tip. Just be aware to gently press it and get the glue all the way to the tip so you don't have any bubbles right before you apply, so they don't pop on your surface. Be aware that if you do get it on any of your surfaces, which you can see here, it will be on there. It's like super glue, you ain't getting that off. It's safe for mirror acrylic, which is really cool. The final one I want to mention is the UV resin, and that's what I used for this. So if you need a waterproof application, I suggest your Well-Don, or I suggest UV resin. I love UV resin. It's just kind of pricey, but once again, really clear. You're just going to kind of see the edges. But I think out of all of them, they each have their best advantages. I find the UV resin and the All Craft and the Gorilla Glue to be the clearest. The 3M, I think, is probably one of the easiest to use because it's peel and stick. This, it seems like it would have a large learning curve. I love this because it just has a million applications of how you can use it. So these two, when it comes to like simplicity of using, I really like. The best thing about this one is you need nothing else. You don't need a spray bottle. You just need this. You do not need a UV lamp. You do not need a syringe. You do not need to buy the really expensive 3M or pre-apply it and then waste areas where you cut it. And you don't need the spray bottle. Now, you can use this without the spray bottle, but I'm telling you, if you're able to spray the surface, it will spread really beautifully. But that works best for sandwich pieces. If you're just putting like a small piece on something else, don't spray it with water. It's going to go everywhere. So those are probably my top glues, and those are a couple little advantages of how to use them. Now, what I'm going to do is turn on my light and turn off the sound probably, and I'm going to show you these samples again really quickly with brighter light so that you can get a sense of what they look like under the light. All right, so let's just speed through this a little bit. It's going a little bit quick, but I wanted to show you the samples on the gray background and then on the black velvet mat board. Do note that there are a lot of fingerprints on these, so some of what you're seeing is just distortion on the actual acrylic itself. If you want more detailed photos, make sure to check out the blog that this should be linked to. That'll give you a little bit more high resolution detail at what you're looking at. So as we're finishing up here, let me just give you my kind of final recommendations. So if you're doing an edge-to-edge application, you need the glue to go all the way to the edges and you need it to be as clear as humanly possible. I suggest the Gorilla Glue, the UV resin, or in some cases, the 3M. So the 3M will definitely get you edge to edge, but you sometimes have a little bit of that frosty bubble look. The other two should be relatively clear, but they're a little bit harder to work with based on the reasons I gave you earlier. If you need ultimate strength, I suggest the Well-Don, and that works only for acrylic to acrylic. If you need fast and or you're going to do edge to edge like those earrings, I recommend the All Craft. And the All Craft also works really great for mirror. The Gorilla Glue also works for mirror, but the Well-Don does not work for mirrored acrylic, and the UV resin will only work if light can reach it, so it won't work if you're applying the mirrored acrylic to a solid background. So here you see me just kind of finishing up as I go through these different samples. And now let's take a look at some still images so you can get a sense of them in high resolution, sort of not moving, no reflective light situation. So here are all the samples. You can pause here if you'd like to look at them in a little bit more detail, and this will also be in the blog. We also have them here on a black background and the gray background, so you can kind of see how the edges look sort of crossing over. Here are all of our frosted samples, and the bottom is All Craft, by the way. And then finally, our edge-to-edge samples. So hopefully that gives you a good sense of what glues I recommend and then how to use them. If you want more details, just make sure to check out the blog and let me know if you have any questions.